One morning, you forget why you walked into the room. Later, a familiar name slips away even as you stare at the face. You sit down to read like you always do, and somehow the meaning does not land. You wonder, when did my memory start slipping? This is reality for more than 16 million adults, over 65 in the United States alone, often years before it is ever called dementia. But there is hope. In this episode, you will learn the top 10 foods you can eat now to protect the brain's wiring and stop memory loss. Welcome back to the Senior Health Podcast, where East meets West to help you stay strong, clear, and independent after 60. Now hear this. The World Health Organization reports that up to 40% of dementia cases worldwide are linked to modifiable risk factors. That means memory loss is not simply age or fate. It is shaped by daily patterns, how we eat, how we sleep, how we move, and what the brain is exposed to over time. If we don't understand this, we lose more than memory. We lose confidence. We blame stress. We joke about getting old. But behind the lapses is often a pattern which can be reversed. And to help us understand it, sitting across from me is someone who has seen it for over a century, Japan's oldest physician. It is so good to have you back. Thank you, John. I always say memory loss is not a punishment, but a message, and food is not just fuel, it is instruction for the brain. That really resonates because for so many seniors listening, that is the silent frustration. You are doing what always worked, reading, staying active, keeping busy, but your mind does not respond the way it used to. And it is so easy to blame age. I understand, John, but it is not just age. It is also misalignment. I have seen this in thousands of patients, seniors who feel they are slipping, not because their brain is weak, but because their daily patterns stopped feeding it what it needs. Today, I will walk through the 10 best foods I trust most for protecting the aging brain and why they work. And I invite you to stay with us till the end, because food alone is not the full story. There is one factor that determines whether these foods truly help the brain at all, and most seniors are never told about it. I am glad you said that. One of my patients, Harold, once looked at me with quiet frustration and said, "I still read. I still stay busy, but I can feel my mind slipping." When we looked closer, it was not his effort that was failing. It was what he had been eating and trusting most. I have heard that same fear more times than I can count. I feel like I am losing myself. But in truth, most seniors are not broken. They are simply missing the right signals to protect the brain. So let us change that today. To everyone listening right now, please commend where you're watching from so we know you are tuned in. Now, doctor, what foods are quietly accelerating memory loss and which ones can help protect it starting now? I will reveal the first food in a minute. John, I want everyone listening to understand that memory loss after 60 is often described as inevitable, but that idea has done quite harm to generations of seniors. The brain does change with age, yes, but it also adapts, repairs, and responds to daily signals far longer than most were ever told. What matters is not perfection, but the patterns we repeat. That reframing alone feels relieving because so many seniors blame themselves when they notice small slips. They assume it is aging winning instead of something they can still influence. I hear that a lot in seniors. The brain is not a static organ that simply fades with time. It listens constantly to information coming from the body, especially from what we eat, how regularly we eat it, and how consistently we nourish ourselves over years instead of weeks. That makes sense, especially when you see how some seniors stay sharp while others decline quickly. Exactly. Food is not just fuel for the body, it is information for the brain. Every meal sends signals that either support clarity and resilience or quietly add strain and confusion. In Japanese tradition, we focus less on extremes and more on steady nourishment that the brain can trust day after day. That contrast feels important, especially compared to how aggressively food is marketed here. Yes, and this leads us forward. Western habits often chase quick fixes or dramatic changes while the brain responds better to calm consistency. Large, long-term studies from Harvard Medical School and the Rush University Memory and Aging Project, following tens of thousands of adults over decades, show that seniors who maintain steady, nutrient-dense eating patterns experience slower cognitive decline, equivalent to being up to 7 years younger neurologically. These findings make it clear that when the brain repeatedly receives signals of stable nourishment, memory loss is not an inevitable part of aging. That perspective alone changes the conversation for seniors listening. It turns fear into something practical and workable. John, once you understand that memory is shaped by repeated biological signals, the choices ahead stop feeling confusing. These foods are not trends or miracles. They are steady, familiar signals the brain has evolved to recognize, respond to, and strengthen itself around over time. Right? It sounds like the list ahead is built on logic, not hype. So tell me, what is the first food on today's list? Let's begin with the foundation. The first food is cruciferous vegetables, foods like kale, broccoli, cauliflower, and arugula. I start here because these vegetables quietly protect the brain's defense system long before memory problems appear. They help the brain handle oxidative stress, which accumulates slowly over decades, often without symptoms. That surprises me because most people think of those vegetables as heart or gut foods, not brain protectors. It feels almost too simple for something so serious. That reminds me of how often the simplest supports are overlooked. Cruciferous vegetables activate the body's natural detox pathways, which helps reduce the invisible burden that interferes with brain signaling. When those pathways are supported regularly, brain cells are better protected from damage that quietly erodes memory over time. This is not about cleansing, but about steady defense. I like that framing because it feels realistic and sustainable. Yes, and this leads us forward. The key here is accumulation. A small serving eaten consistently sends a repeated message of protection. And over years, that message matters more than any single intervention. Seniors who build this habit are often protecting their independence without realizing it. And it sounds like this protection works silently long before symptoms ever show. Exactly. And that quiet effect is important. Once the brain's defenses are supported, circulation becomes the next piece that determines how clearly those protected cells can function. That makes me wonder how blood flow fits into this picture. Is that where the next food comes in? And how does it build on this foundation? Yes, it is. Always start by remembering that the brain is never separated from the blood that feeds it. And garlic becomes important here because it snorts, gently improves circulation without overstimulating the system. Its sulfur compounds help vessels relax, reduce low-grade inflammation, and allow snorts blood to move with less resistance. Over time, that steadier flow protects memory by keeping brain tissue nourished and calm. That helps it click for me because blood flow feels like the delivery system for everything else if nutrients cannot arrive properly. Even good foods would fall short. Indeed, and this is why traditional cultures valued garlic long before modern medicine. They noticed it preserved strength, clarity, and independence into old age. Today we see that small daily amounts can support circulation quietly without forcing the heart or raising stress hormones. It sounds like consistency matters more than intensity here. What you're saying reminds me of something many seniors feel but rarely articulate. Even when circulation improves, memory can still fade if inflammation continues smoldering underneath. Blood can flow well, yet the environment it enters remains irritated and reactive. That distinction feels important for understanding why progress sometimes stalls. Exactly. And once circulation is supported, the next question becomes how to calm the deeper inflammatory signals that quietly damage memory over decades. There is a food that does this patiently, and it snorts has been trusted across cultures for centuries. That makes me curious because it sounds like the next step is about long-term protection rather than quick effects. What is the third food? How does it work? The third food is turmeric. Turmeric helps calm chronic inflammation, the quiet kind that slowly interferes with memory over many years. When inflammation stays elevated, brain cells struggle to communicate clearly even when blood flow is good. Turmeric gently lowers that background noise so the brain can function with less strain. That feels grounding, especially for seniors who are tired of chasing quick fixes. It sounds like this works more in the background than up front. Yes, and that reminds me why turmeric has never been treated as a miracle in traditional cultures. It was used daily in small amounts, paired with a food, and respected for its long view. Modern research shows its active compounds help regulate inflammatory pathways linked to cognitive decline, but it only works well when absorbed properly, which means combining it with fat and a small amount of black pepper. That detail matters more than most people realize. I hear that a lot in seniors, and it explains why turmeric sometimes gets dismissed too quickly. Taken correctly, it supports memory by protecting the brain environment rather than forcing stimulation. This kind of support accumulates quietly month by month without pushing the nervous system. That long-term protection feels especially reassuring at this stage of life. It does. And once inflammation begins to settle, something interesting happens. The mind does not just feel protected. It starts to feel clearer and calmer in daily moments. That opens the door to a different kind of support. I can feel the progression you are describing from protection to clarity. Is that where the next food comes in? How does it help focus without overstimulating the brain? Yes, this is exactly where green tea enters the conversation. Green tea supports focus by calming the nervous system while gently sharpening attention at the same time. It contains catechols that protect brain cells and an amino acid called L-theanine that encourages a steady, relaxed alertness. The mind feels awake but not pushed or overstimulated. That difference matters especially for seniors who feel jittery from coffee or wired from energy drinks. This sounds like clarity without the cost. This is why green tea has been used for centuries in daily rituals, not as a stimulant. The combination of a small amount of caffeine with L-theanine creates balance, not spikes. Research shows this pairing supports attention, mood stability, and cognitive endurance. It allows the brain to stay present without exhausting itself. That feels much more sustainable than chasing energy. The key here is rhythm, not intensity. When green tea becomes a gentle habit, it signals the brain that it is safe to focus calmly. Over time, that steady signal matters more than short bursts of stimulation. That makes me think differently about focus as something we train, not force. Yes, and once calm focus is restored, the brain becomes more receptive to nourishment. That is when certain foods begin to amplify blood flow and memory together. Let's keep up the pace. You are pointing at foods that actively feed memory. Which foods are these? Start by thinking of foods that feed the brain through blood flow rather than stimulation. Blueberries are one of the clearest examples of this. They contain anthocyanins, pigments that help blood vessels relax and deliver oxygen to brain tissue. Over time, this supports memory, learning, and recall. It is quiet nourishment, not a quick jolt. That's interesting because blueberries are so familiar that people rarely think of them as therapeutic. It makes me wonder how something simple can have such a deep effect. Well, in many cultures, berries were eaten in their smaller, darker forms, closer to what nature intended. These older varieties carried more concentrated protective compounds. The brain responds to that density over years, not days. So it is less about eating more and more about eating wisely. Yes. And when we look beyond blueberries, we see black currants and black raspberries offering even stronger signals. These berries deliver higher levels of anthocyanins that support circulation deep inside the brain. They help protect delicate memory centers from oxidative stress. That sounds like protection layered on top of clarity and calm. The key here is that these foods do not force the brain to perform. They improve the environment in which brain cells live. When blood flow improves, communication between neurons becomes smoother. That helps explain why memory can feel steadier, not sharper overnight. I hear that a lot in seniors who expect immediate results. The brain prefers consistency over intensity. A small serving of berries eaten regularly sends a repeated signal of safety and support over time. Learning and recall feel less effortful. That reframes memory support as a long relationship, not a quick fix. Yes, And there is another important distinction. Wild or traditionally grown berries tend to be smaller, darker, and more bitter. Those qualities usually signal higher protective content. Oversized modern fruit often looks appealing, but carries fewer of these compounds. That makes me think differently about what I choose at the store. And patience becomes powerful here. Seniors who include these berries several times a week often describe fewer moments of mental fatigue. They notice steadier focus during reading or conversation. The change is subtle but meaningful over years. These patterns help preserve independence. The brain remembers how it is treated. That feels both hopeful and realistic. But memory does not exist in isolation. The brain is deeply influenced by the immune system as well. When immune stress builds quietly, cognition often suffers first. So, I guess the next food we are discussing bridges that connection between the immune system and memory. What food is it? I always look at the immune system as a silent partner to memory, and elderberries are one of the few foods that speak gently to both. They have long been used to calm immune overactivity that drains mental energy. When the immune system is constantly alert, the brain often pays the price. That makes sense because seniors often describe fatigue before they notice memory changes. And that tells us how closely inflammation and cognition are linked. Elderberries contain compounds that help regulate immune signaling rather than simply stimulating it. This matters because chronic immune stress can quietly cloud attention and recall. The goal is balance, not activation. I appreciate that distinction because many seniors assume more immune stimulation is always better. It sounds like that assumption can backfire over time. Yes, and understand that moderation is essential. A small amount of elderberry taken consistently supports resilience without overwhelming the system. Food-based forms tend to work more gently than concentrated supplements. The brain responds best when immune signals are steady and calm. That feels reassuring, especially for seniors who are cautious about adding new supplements. I hear that a lot in seniors who want clarity without risk. Elderberries work best as part of a broader pattern rather than a single solution. When immune load eases, mental fatigue often lifts first. Memory follows slowly after. So the benefit shows up as endurance rather than instant sharpness. Exactly. And this prepares the body for the next layer of support. Once inflammation and immune stress are quieter, the brain becomes more receptive to structural nourishment. That transition is subtle but important. That makes me curious because structure sounds different from signaling or protection. And that is where the conversation naturally turns next. The brain is not only chemistry and circulation, it is also built from fats that insulate and protect communication. Okay? So, which foods help build that structure? And I think it's important to include how seniors use that support without going to extremes. John, we should think of the brain as an electrical network that needs insulation to stay clear and fast. This is where omega-3 fats come in. They are what help form that insulation, especially around nerve fibers. Without enough of them, signals still travel, but they leak and slow. Over time, that affects memory, focus, and emotional steadiness. That image really lands for me, because seniors often say their thoughts feel scattered rather than gone. It sounds structural, not just chemical. Yes, it shows that omega-3 rich foods matter more than isolated nutrients. Fatty fish, flax seeds, and walnuts provide these fats in forms the brain recognizes and uses gradually. They support the myelin sheath that protects communication between brain cells. This is how clarity is preserved, not forced. That helps explain why extremes or megadoses never seem to work long-term. The key here is balance and rhythm. Small, regular portions build structure quietly over months, not days. Seniors do not need large servings or daily fish to benefit. The brain responds best to consistency. That feels encouraging for seniors who want progress without pressure. I hope so. And when structure is supported, the brain can finally use the signals and protection we discussed earlier. Everything begins to cooperate instead of compete. That makes me wonder how daily traditions support this without complexity. And that is exactly where the final piece appears. There are foods that support structure while also stabilizing energy and digestion. They are familiar and deeply rooted in Japanese tradition. So which traditional foods do seniors rely on to bring all of this together? Begin by looking at what has sustained Japanese seniors quietly for generations. Seeds and legumes were never eaten for quick results, but for steadiness. Foods like edamame, sesame, adzuki beans, natto, and miso provide gentle protein, minerals, and fermentation that support the brain through the gut. They create a sense of internal rhythm rather than stimulation. That feels very different from how food is marketed today. It sounds calmer, almost grounding. The brain listens to the gut. These foods help stabilize blood sugar, reduce low-grade inflammation, and support beneficial bacteria that communicate with the nervous system. Seniors often notice better clarity when digestion feels settled. This is not about intensity, but about trust built over time. It sounds like these foods work quietly in the background. The key here is repetition without strain. A small bowl of beans, a sprinkle of sesame, or a cup of miso soup signals safety and nourishment to the body. The brain responds when the body feels consistently supported. That feels achievable even for seniors with limited appetite or energy. It is when nourishment becomes steady. All the foods we discussed finally have a foundation to work from. But there is one more element that determines whether any of this truly reaches the brain. And I promise to leave this for the end to reward the people that are still listening. That pause makes me curious because it sounds like something we often overlook. It is. Seniors can eat perfectly and still feel foggy if this final piece is missing. So, what is this hidden factor that allows all of these foods to actually do their work inside the brain? The hidden factor is hydration. Without enough fluid moving through the body, nutrients cannot travel. Signals slow down and the brain never fully receives what food is offering. Even mild dehydration thickens the blood and reduces delivery to brain tissue. That feels surprisingly simple. Almost too simple for something so important. Yes, and that is why it is often missed. Seniors may eat well, but if fluids are low, the brain stays slightly undernourished. Hydration keeps circulation smooth, supports electrical signaling, and allows antioxidants, fats, and minerals to actually reach neurons. Food is the message, but water is the messenger. That actually reframes everything we have talked about tonight. Yes, remember this. When hydration is steady, memory feels clearer, focus lasts longer, and fatigue softens. When it is not, even the best foods fall short, and yet this is rarely discussed with the care it deserves. Perfect, doctor. To everyone listening, I hope this all made sense to you. If not, please send us any questions you might have in the comments. We always try to reply to all of you. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Oh, and watch this next video right now. Yes, please. We've picked this one especially for you.